Hello, welcome back to the Chaos Gardener channel. I'm Michael Fulton, and I want to show you how I like to grow potatoes. Join me in the chaos. All right, starting off, you need a source of potatoes. Some people tell you not to grow the ones that you buy from the grocery store, but I found they work just fine. I don't happen to have any that are, sprouting. They call this chitted, but I don't have any like this, but I went over by Ace earlier for some rope, and they had chitted potatoes for only $10, $9.99. So I'm going to show you how I like to prepare them. So a lot of people like to slice these up. Do you have to? No, but I like to. Can you guess why? You get more plants. So if you put one potato in the ground, you could potentially have, a dozen potato plants from that one potato. So if you want, you can just put that one potato in the ground. But since all those mini potato plants are all going to be sharing the same real estate, so to speak, the same space, you're going to limit how much of that space can be turned into potatoes and how much leaves can be gathering sunlight. And so by chopping them up, you're increasing the amount of solar energy that you're able to capture, and effectively you're increasing how many total potatoes you can yield. So by chopping these up, you're effectively just creating more space to capture more sunlight, to produce more starch, to store up for more food. So that's the reason that people cut these up, to get more plants. So as you can see here, I have 3 spots I could easily separate if I wanted to. So I don't necessarily need this many for how many I'm gonna plant. I'm only gonna use probably 100 square feet for potatoes. And so I don't need an incredible number of plants, but just for the sake of this video, I'm gonna show you what I would do if I wanted to turn this into 3 plants. So if you've done this before, you can probably already see what I'm gonna do. Slice here, slice there. So sharp knife, slice, and you wanna sterilize your knife before, of course. And as you can see, those are too close together. I mean, if I really, really wanted to, I could probably separate those, maybe this one on the right, but I'd be too scared to get too close to those. If you look really close, you can almost tell where the roots are going to come out of these. So the starch that's stored in this potato is going to power the plant. So the plant is going to rely on that starch in this chunk of potato to get these baby potato plants through the soil surface. And then of course, once they're through the soil surface, they can start harvesting sunlight, capturing carbon dioxide, and then using that combination of sugar and energy to continue growing. So you just need enough energy to break the surface. This is plenty. I'm probably gonna only plant these 4 or 5 inches down below the surface. Probably not even that, maybe like 2 inches. What I like to do is I'll create a hole. And again, I've seen videos, you don't have to bury them. I like to bury them. Some people just like to put them on the surface and put wood chips or mulch on top of them. I'm not gonna do that because I want more yield. I believe that I can get more yield just by burying them a little bit. So what I do is I dig a hole or a trench that's about 6 inches deep. And then I put these at the bottom of the trench, and then I'll add soil. And so I usually add soil until these little slips, if they have growths, if they have starts on them, I'll bury them until those are just under the surface, just to give them an opportunity just to emerge from the surface. So in this case, this one will probably be that distance, whatever that is, 3 inches below the surface. I can separate these two this one into 2 different plants. So as you can see there. And if you'll notice, this is really juicy, like a freshly cut apple. And it might not necessarily be a good thing to put that into the soil right away while it's wet and juicy. You can imagine you could probably start growing some unfriendly things that really would love to take advantage of that free nutrient, that free starch that's on here. Bacteria, yeast, fungus, they would love to have that for a food source. So I'm going to let these dry out. Some people say not to put these in the sun. I think it's actually better. You get a better callus on these if you leave them in the sun, at least for a little bit. And so I'll probably just leave these in the sun for a little bit, and then I'll put them in. They say they need at least 24 hours. I found if you just let these dry out for a few hours until you feel them and you feel that they have a nice little callus, that's plenty of time. You can go ahead and stick them in the soil. But if you want to be extra safe, then yeah, sure, give them 24 hours, 48 hours. So here's another opportunity to turn this into 2 potato plants. So give them as much space as you can. And just for a little bit better understanding of what these potatoes are capable of, I've heard stories, I haven't had this happen myself, but I've heard stories of people actually using a potato peeler to remove the peels from potatoes and then throwing those potato peels into their compost pile and having those peels actually chit out. Chit out means to grow these little shoots and successfully grow potatoes from potato peels. So obviously I don't need this much on there. Some people like to cut it off, but it's not really necessary. I've heard people say that they're more likely to rot if they have too much potato on there. But like I said, if you let them callus over for a couple days, it doesn't really matter. And I'm not really that worried about it. I've never not had a potato fail. I mean, sometimes the plants don't have a very good yield, but from my experience, every single time I've planted a seed potato chunk, it always emerges as a plant. You know, sometimes I'll have like a ground hog or a squirrel or something damage the plant, or my dogs, you know, step on it or ruin it, and then it dies, but it'll always at least emerge from the surface. And when I say always, we're gonna say 99%, just so I can be humble, I guess, just in case there's some unforeseen variable that I'm not considering. Those happen a lot. You guys know what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm trying to position these in the way so every edge that I've made can callus. I'm not seeing any that just jump out at me as being able to be separated. And again, I probably don't need this many. If you followed my channel though, you kind of know that I like to call myself the Chaos Gardener for a reason. So what I'll probably end up doing is I'll plant other potato plants in other parts of my yard that you wouldn't expect. So if I have extras of these, I might just take my auger drill and just make holes randomly in the yard around the perimeter and just drop these into those just to see what'll happen. Just to see if I can get a random potato plant just popping up in random places. And the cool thing is say, you know, winter comes and I never take the time to actually harvest, I'll have some stored potatoes that'll pop up again. So this has happened to me in Missouri, which is where I'm at, zone 6. You plant potatoes and you don't harvest them all, and then guess what happens the next year? A lot of times they'll just sprout right up again. Just to give you an idea, this is a really good example of what happens when you do plant these. If you look really close here, you'll see that there's already roots forming across that bottom edge of those shoots. Those are roots. And that's what's gonna happen basically. You put these in the soil and the roots are gonna come right out of the base of those, and the energy is going to be coming from the actual, what's left of the potato. That starch is going to be used to power those roots, to power those stems, to get them to the surface. So I could probably take off that lower left one if I really wanted to. I'm not going to worry about it that much, but it's kind of cool to see what the roots are going to look like. All right, I'm going to go put some of these in the ground. I'll show you what I do next. All right, I figured I'd show this. So is this the right way to seed potatoes? Probably not. But does it work? Yes, it does. So I'm gonna admit that right now. There's probably better ways to do this, but this is one of the funnest ways to do it, right? So if I want a hole here, and again, of course, a spade would have worked fine. I know someone's gonna say that's just silly. And yeah, it is a little silly. I'll admit it. All right. So I've let these dry for probably 20 minutes. That's probably not the right amount of time to do it. You should probably do it for a couple days. Are they still gonna grow? Yeah, they're still gonna grow. They might experience a little bit of rot here, but it's spring, so those are gonna take off long before the rot becomes a problem. So again, best case scenario, no. Does this work? Yes. Is it really easy? Yes. So those are big pluses for me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and drop this down here. That's about 3 inches down. Cover them up. That's all you do. There's another one. Same thing. I can put a little bit of soft soil down there first. Covered up. Another one. That one's not chitted out as well. Let's take one. This one's good. I'm gonna make the hole a little deeper for that one. So I'm just trying to push the base down without damaging that massive stem. So I have pretty clay soil, but this is a nice aggregate. Like, I'm impressed with how well that's aggregating. So what that means basically is once you have clay soil that gets, you put wood chips over it, fungus and bacteria start colonizing that soil, and it forms like these little, how do you describe it? They're aggregates. They're like, they almost look like pellets of really dark, fine soil. And so that's how you know your soil's happy. Microorganisms in the soil are happy. And there's a little bit of green on here. I do have a small chance of frost since I'm near the end of March. I looked on the weather, what is it, AccuWeather? I have a weather app on my phone I use. And there's not supposed to be another frost for the rest of the year. Yes, it's still possible. Does frost really hurt potatoes? Light frost, probably not. You can go down to a couple degrees below freezing, probably be just fine. But just the same, I'm just gonna cover it up with maybe, 1/4 inch of soil, just to give it the opportunity to choose whether or not it's ready to emerge from the soil, just in case it's too cold for it. So 3 little potato plants ready to go. Were those too close together? Maybe. I think about 1 foot apart is plenty. I've heard people say they need to be 2 feet apart because the potato plants can get pretty big. One potato plant could probably be, 1 foot or 2 wide, but not really that worried about it. That's pretty much how I do it with a seed drill or with a, what do they call that, auger? So pretty fast, effective way if you're a little lazy like me. You can also get out a spade or a shovel or whatever else makes you happy and make nice trenches and whatever you want to do. I hope this helps you though. Thanks for joining me in the chaos. All right, here's another good example of how you can get a lot of seed potatoes out of 1 potato. Little bee wants some starch. Hey, little buddy. All right, so you can, see if I can do this without hurting the little bee. You can separate these two. Separate those two. Separate those two. And a longer knife would probably be good with this. Just using my pocket knife because it's just right in my pocket always. And who doesn't love their trusty scaly tool? Separate those two. Separate those two. So, as you can see, you can get quite a bit of these out of 1. All right, so this is how I like to do my potatoes normally. So I'll use a spade, nice deep shovel tip. And since it's narrow, it makes it really easy to pierce tough soil. Soil's pretty soft here. Has a nice thick, nice soft, squishy aggregate of organic material and clay. So it's a clay soil, but I kept mulch on it for a year, and now it's just like super beautiful, rich, full of worms soil. So basically what I do is, once my potatoes calloused, and I could probably separate them into 2, that's okay. I like to have the slips, what do you call those things? Stems? I guess with slips, that's only sweet potatoes, huh? So anyway, I'll have them facing upward. And I like to add enough soil so that the sweet potato is about 1 inch under. So that whole thing's probably about 8 inches down. But I don't want it to be too deep until that stem starts going towards the surface. So I'm gonna add soil. Oops. Careful not to break your stems. Heavy clumps of dirt. You have a nice rich soil aggregate. This is a lot easier. And I'll lightly press it down. You don't have to press it down too hard. Just enough that you don't get air pockets. You don't want anything to dry out. And then you want the soil to be able to conduct water properly. And what I mean by that, if you're not aware, is capillary action. The soil particles being in contact with each other allows water to like slip through in between those particles, and it allows the soil to basically conduct water and pass water. You know, if it's wet here and dry here, the water will wick from one spot to another. If your soil is, you know, rich with mycelium, so fungal networks and all that, good bacteria and things. Anyway, notice that I'm still a good 4 inches below the surface. So this is how I kind of like to do them. I did that one the same way. So potatoes buried a good inch under, 2 inches under, and I still have 4 inches to go. So what I'm going to do is once that potato emerges and, you know, the potato plant's a good, you know, 6 inches up or so, I'll start adding soil. And what will end up happening is the russets will end up putting more potatoes out the sides. You can also do this in rows, and then you can just hoe dirt onto the stem of the plant if you're doing a whole bunch. You know, this is just small scale. This is the easiest way to do it. So if you've never done this before, easy way to do it. You could also do it in rows. I kind of like to spread my plants out. It prevents fungal infections and disease in plants if you just have them spread. Obviously, that you can't really scale this to large scale farming, but it works in your backyard if you just like that chaos. I just like my plants spread out a little bit. Love having potato plants just kind of popping up throughout my vineyard. So all throughout here I'll have grapevines and things, strawberry plants. What else did I plant in here? Raspberries, blackberries. I even have a little apple tree right here, I believe. Pear tree. Anyway, thanks for joining me in the chaos. Hope this helps you.